Hey there everybody, Travis Bowman here. I have done it. I have finally collected all of the first and second generation Pokemon games. These things are really collectible, and it's not like there was a shortage of them or anything, but it's just one of those things where it's super popular, super nostalgic, and I think everybody that's in their 30s now is starting to remember these games and they want them exactly like they had them back in the day. So there you have an influx of people paying a ridiculous price to get their hands on their old childhood games, and here we have the first two generations of the Pokemon games here. I grew up playing these games like a lot of other people, particularly the first two generations. It's not like I collected all of them, but I've collected the ones that I personally wanted to get. Now this took quite a long time. I think it was over a span of like a year, you know, hunting and pecking. I did not, for the most part, pay an outrageous price just to get my hands on these and have them in my collection. I figured since I finally have them all together, I thought it would be really awesome if we could just go through and have a little discussion about these games, and I'll share with you how I got my hands on these. Now, it's not like I went to a garage sale and found them all for like 10 bucks or something like that, but I did get a couple of good deals, and in some cases maybe not so good a deal. So I think the first one that I got my hands on, it was a package deal where I got, I believe it was yellow and silver. So I didn't go in order by any means, and I actually got these kind of in a trade. So I found a guy that was into old school CRTs, and I had an old Dell CRT, and I think I traded him something else. I really don't remember. It was quite a long time ago, but that's how I got my hands on these two. And of course the batteries, if you know anything about these old Pokemon games, they require a change of a battery, which is actually extremely simple to do. You just have to kind of open it up inside here. It takes a really particular bit called the game bit. If you don't have one of those screwdrivers that have the game bit thing on them, you really should, because they're so useful not only for these Game Boy cartridges but for Nintendo consoles as well, particularly the Super Nintendo. Yellow is not the best shape. It's kind of fading up there. I've got these little box protectors, which is what I keep them in. But for this video, I figured I'd bust them out so we could take a close look at these things together. Yeah, it's not the best shape, but not the worst either. And I've replaced all of the batteries in all of these, so they should be good to go as far as gameplay and saving and all that good stuff for at least another 15-20 years, I think. Silver, got a little bit of some writing and a little scratched up there. Definitely not the best shape, but you know what? It's not about having it pristine for me. I just want it to be, you know, playable and all that good stuff. So those are the first two that I got my hands on, was silver and Pokemon Yellow. Kind of a strange combination, but I'll take it. Pokemon Blue. I picked this one up, I think, gosh, I think I met some guy on the Facebook Marketplace for this one. I can't be 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure I paid like 40 bucks for it, which, you know, a couple months ago, that was the going rate. As far as this, you know, fluctuating in price, I just don't know. I couldn't even tell you what they're going for currently. And you might be watching this video several years into the future, and they might be going upwards of, you know, 100 bucks for some of these games at this point. But Blue, I think I just got this at a Facebook Marketplace pickup. I think, 40 bucks, something around there, if I remember correctly. There's Pokemon Blue for you. Now this is the one for me that kind of started it all. I remember getting this kind of around the same time before I could read. I remember having a difficult time getting through it because I just couldn't read that well. At this point in time, I was that young. But other than whatever this sticker gunk is on there that I probably need to eradicate, but other than that, this is probably the most pristine copy that I have in my personal collection of the Pokemon games, and I kind of like that. This was the game that I wish I held on to, and I think a lot of people are feeling that as well when they're picking up these Pokemon games, is that, God, I wish I would have held on to everything, you know. And I remember opening up Pokemon Gold down here, which we'll take a closer look at in a second. I remember opening that up. I have very vivid memories of me opening the box and immediately throwing the box in the trash. And I think, like so many other people these days, we're just kicking ourselves, but we didn't know any better back then. You know, we were kids. We had no idea that these things would appreciate in value so well. And of course, to get a complete copy of Pokemon Red in the box with all of the manuals and all that stuff, everything as you would get it brand new back in the day, people are trying to sell these things for upwards of $300, maybe even $400 or $500. It's kind of insane, but I'm just really glad to have this one. This is probably my favorite because it's the one I started with. And growing up, my sister had Pokemon Blue and I had Red, and that's just such a brilliant thing from Nintendo and Game Freak doing this with these two games. It's a wonderful marketing decision looking back on it, to be honest with you. We're going to take all these Pokemon and just take a handful of them and have them locked to each physical cartridge. And by golly, it worked. And they're still doing that to this day. So you need both to get all of them. Having both of them today, not that I'm super deep into playing these games as much as I used to be, but I have found myself going back. It is nice to start like Pokemon Red and go through the game and like beat it and have access to catching all the Pokemon in that game. Catch the ones that you want in the late game that you can't get when you're first starting the game, and trade them over to your other copy. And the replayability is just awesome because of that, because you can have so many different combinations of your 6 Pokemon in your party. I just think it's really cool just to have these and being able to do this still to this day. So now Red, I picked this one up at a local game exchange here in Central Arkansas, and both myself and the guy behind the counter were actually kind of buds now because I go in there so much. But we were talking about it, and he's like, yeah, this is probably one of the more pristine copies I've ever seen. I think it was around $40-50, something like that, you know. And again, people are trying to charge almost $100 for some of these, so I just bit the bullet on that and said, yeah, it's gonna be kind of harder to find, so I went ahead and bit the bullet, about $50 for that guy. Now, Pokemon Gold. This was also a marketplace pickup. Now, it's going to be kind of hard to see on camera, but I do have a little bit of some scratchy scratches there, just like I did with Silver. That's just the way it is. I don't care, though. I just want to be able to play the game, and it's in decent condition. The label's still intact. All of these are really 100% authentic. I've checked them all out myself, opened them up, changed all the batteries and what have you with the soldering iron, and this was really the one that I spent the most time with when I was a kid. Pokemon Gold, like I said, I have such vivid memories. It's crazy how that happens. Like some things you remember and some things just absolutely vacate your brain that you cannot remember. But Pokemon Gold, I have vivid memories of coming home from the store, getting this, I think at Walmart, and opening up the packaging, throwing that away, and beginning the Gen 2 adventure. In my opinion, Gen 2 is still the best generation of Pokemon. And finally, the big dog. The big dog that fetches a lot of money these days is Pokemon Crystal. Now, like Pokemon Yellow, this is kind of like an expansion that kind of came after the two main games in the generation. I really do like this one a lot. I think this one and Pokemon Gold are some of my best memories with the Game Boy, for being honest. Now, you can see through this one. You couldn't see through the other ones. I thought I'd mention, because I know people in the comments section are going to go kind of crazy about this. You don't see the yellow battery in there like you should. So what we did, I work at a guitar store, I'm a guitar teacher. There's all sorts of equipment back there in the shop for doing little jobs, perfect for stuff like this. So instead of buying the batteries off like Amazon or eBay or something like that, we just took the regular CR2032s and got some of this aluminum tape, and that's how we soldered it in there. And I did this like 6-7 months ago, and it's still working fine. As long as your soldering job is nice and tight, this should be just fine. And like I said, it's been working ever since. I paid a lot of money for this, I won't lie to you. This one's getting really hard to find. For some reason back in the day, this particular version of the Gen 2 games, Crystal, it just didn't sell very well. So it's probably one of the more scarce copies to have, but I remember playing it back in the day. I had this back in the day. I don't remember opening it like I did the other games that I had. I remember opening Red and I remember opening Gold, but do not remember opening this, but I remember playing it because this was the first game that allowed you to play as a girl. So I remember doing that. I always played as a girl just because you could. It was different at the time. Really happy to have this one. I got this off a buddy of mine who sold it to me for a little bit less than what he probably could have sold it for, and I'm really grateful for that. I'm just happy to have it in this collection of Pokemon games. Finally, we have some of the other rarer Pokemon games. This time we're on the Game Boy Advance. Now, technically, this is Generation 3, and that's when I kind of dropped off of playing the Pokemon games all the time because I was getting older, I was getting into more guitar and stuff like that, and just kind of fell off for a while. I picked this one up, Fire Red, from a buddy of mine who knew somebody. These are getting up there for what they are. They are a remake, essentially. This is a remake of the original Red. It's using a lot of the mechanics and the battle style and stuff like that from the third generation of Pokemon games, but it's still kind of like a remake of Pokemon Red. The last one that I picked up, this is the very last one I needed in this collection, was Leaf Green, and I picked this up at a game exchange. And it was the last one that I needed, and it wasn't super cheap, but game exchange sometimes they like to move stuff, so they'll oftentimes have things like 10, 15, maybe even 20% less than what they're going for on the internet. I put this on the shelf, and there it was. All of those Pokemon games together at last. There they all are. Lots of nostalgia here. Everybody has their own reason for liking this series. I know people in their 40s that are still into this stuff these days. I'm not as obsessed with it as a lot of people are. Never got into the card games, never really got too deep into the anime, although Pokemon the first movie was really dope as a kid. I really enjoyed that movie as a kid. The games themselves, they're actually really great RPGs. You can play through these, and like I said, you can have like several different teams going forward, and the end result could be the same every time depending on how you play it, or it could be completely different. You got good Pokemon, bad Pokemon, meaning good Pokemon with great stats, and then bad Pokemon with not so great stats. But that just adds to your difficulty. You can play it with any one that you want. I think that's why people like it so much, is because each one of these Pokemon have completely different stats and they look different. Some people have a favorite. For me, it's Snorlax. I don't know why, but I always really liked playing through with Snorlax because it was probably a hell of a lot easier when I was a kid because he was a massive tank in that game. These things are so collectible now, not because there's not a bajillion of them out there, but I think it's because people tend to hang on to these things when they get them, and I'm no exception. I've got them all, and they're not going anywhere. You know, it's just nice to have them. It's a nice reminder, whether you play them or not, of what your childhood was. I had a pretty decent childhood. I really did, and I played a lot of games, and these were up there, man. I remember playing with this Game Boy without the backlit screen, sit in front of a lamp just so I could see the damn thing. It was a great time. It was really a great time. I've taken a lot from this that's not just playing games as a kid. The music in all of these games were incredibly inspiring. So much so that, you know, when I started to learn how to play the guitar when I was in the 6th grade, a few years after that, I would come back and listen to these video game tunes in a different light. And I would start to recognize things musically that I might not have when I was a small child. And that'll about do it, ladies and gentlemen. You know, I've got some of these Pokemon themes up on my YouTube channel. I've got performance videos of a lot of these, and I really hope you'll check those out, and maybe it'll bring you some nostalgia that you didn't know you were missing. What do you guys think about the first 2 generations of Pokemon? I know a lot of people really like Gen 3. I've never played it. I never really have. For me, Generation 1 and 2 was more than enough to get into, and I'm still getting into them to this day. I'm curious what your favorite generation is. This is a great opportunity to share some memories of your childhood with these Pokemon games. Let's start a discussion thread in the comment section below. Let's share your great memories of these games. You know, a lot of people are actually sharing these games with their kids now. You know, I'm 31, and a lot of people are having kids around my age, and they're growing up 6, 7 years old like I was, and they're sharing these games with their kids, and it's really a beautiful thing. It really is. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for subscribing. I really appreciate the support here on YouTube, and I'll see you guys at the next video. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.